I'm George, and I've been hunting mushrooms for essentially since I was a knee-high to a grasshopper, as they say. One of the reasons I get terribly excited about morels is you spend the winter indoors, it's freezing, it's cold. Morels are one of the first vernal activities that people get engaged in outdoors. It's similar to fishing for some people. They get out in the spring, they're outside, they're doing something in nature. And plus, morels are just pretty darn tasty. So I think that's one of the reasons that people get excited. It's also kind of a treasure hunt. This year, morels were being spotted in the early half of March in Kansas, which is quite early. It's not unheard of. Morels have been found in Kansas as early as late February. But typically, I usually find the most morels between April 20th and May 5th. That's just a ballpark average, though. A morel mushroom, all of the edible morel species, mushrooms that pass as morels, are completely hollow on the inside. There are a few mushrooms that look like morels, false morels, and they either have a ribbed network of convoluted fleshy folds on the interior, or they have a cotton-like context on the inside. So there's one called Verpa bohemica, which looks very similar to one of these half-free, so-called half-free morels. There's a culture of morel hunting in Kansas and the Midwest, and most people know what they're doing when it comes to morels. But with other species of mushrooms, it's absolutely critical that they know what they're doing. They get second opinions from reputable people before they eat mushrooms that they find in the woods or in their lawn or wherever. Morels are hard to find. Their coloration often mimics the environment in which they're growing. So the difficulty in finding them, I think, is probably the chief reason for people's secretive nature. They're scarce. In Kansas, the trees that you want to focus on would be our state tree, the cottonwood, elm trees, ash trees, and cedar trees to a certain extent. I find a lot of them underneath cedar trees. That seems to be less common in Kansas. If you go south to Oklahoma, it's more common to see them beneath cedars. Probably the most common misconception about morels is whether or not they grow. I occasionally bump into people hunting morels in the woods, and they will have their bags or baskets full of little eensy tiny mushrooms. And given favorable weather conditions, tiny morel mushrooms will grow into large morel mushrooms over the course of sometimes weeks. Probably the most intriguing fact that's fun for me is that they are not well understood, and they are amazingly diverse. There are thousands of different mushroom species that live in Kansas, millions of different species of mushrooms that live worldwide, and that I find to be relatively exciting. It's intriguing to me.